whether you're a Transformers fan or not, I think the story of the Constructicons is an interesting one.
You talked about that, about how they're creators, but they also destroy things, and it's kind of their gods in that way. Do you want to talk about that a little bit more?
Yeah, it fascinated me because, especially as a kid, it was a seminal moment for me when I collected the Decepticons and my brother collected the Autobots. When they introduced Devastator in the cartoon series growing up, I was like, finally, we're going to win! Finally, it's not going to end with Decepticons Retreat! But it still ended with Decepticons Retreat. So I figured maybe now that I'm an adult, I can take matters into my own hands and make the Constructicons have even though they may start the series a little downtrodden, they don't necessarily end the series that way. So,
did you ever write any fan fiction when you were growing up?
Not in a professional type of fashion, but I had notebooks and stuff, and I've been writing these stories since I was a kid. Like, honestly, whether it was in my head or writing it in a notebook, Transformers were my passion. And I tell everybody, other kids had Star Wars, other kids had, Spider-Man or Captain America or Batman, and I like those too, but the Transformers and the Constructicons were always my number one. So for me to be able to write the origin story for them, it's like the dream that every kid has when they're growing up, to be able to write the origin story of the thing that you love the most. So it was like somebody who loves Bruce Wayne being able to write the Wayne story about how his parents got murdered and like putting a new spin on it. So
is that how far back it starts? Does it start when they're created or when they meet each other?
Well, we were introduced to them after they're recently forged, but we don't actually see them being forged or anything. They're already as a group together. Anybody who's following the IDW series that started with Brian Ruckley knows that a lot of what goes on Cybertron now is of personal choice. So you make a choice as to what your role is going to be. So they very much make a choice to be who they are. And then a lot of stuff goes awry in terms of them making that choice. And I don't want to get too into how Devastator comes into the picture, but let's just say he's not the character that we're initially introduced to in the cartoon.
You talk about broken promises and lost futures, so there's a betrayal element as well?
There very much is, yes. Some of my favorite movies and some of my favorite fiction involve revenge, like the John Wicks and Equalizers of the world. So I love Gladiator. Like they all have that common theme of someone sort of getting even in the end, and this is very much along those story arc lines. So 4 issues. I believe it's starting into September, although earlier today in the panel, David Mariotte said possibly August, so I guess I need to get that clear.
And you're working with Livio Ramondelli?
Livio Ramondelli is a legend already, and I just saw what issue 1 looks like yesterday for the first time. It brought tears to my eyes, so it was very much a overwhelming emotional moment for me, because the thing is, I started doing this again. Like, I had gone off and built my own business and I had done other things there, but I got back into Transformers because my son brought me back into it. Like, he started collecting it and he started getting into it, and I started remembering all these stories and the passion that I felt for this franchise, and it just completely reignited something in me that, quite frankly, I didn't realize that it was still there until my son started to get into it. And then I was like, I was guns a-blazing, wanting to write this story so badly. So, and to be able to do it with Livio and a talent like his it just leaves me speechless, because his talent is, I tell him what the script's going to be, and he creates it perfectly. He creates exactly what I've envisioned in my brain. And that's the thing, that when you have that symbiotic relationship, it's almost like forming Devastator in a sense. Like, you're able to work in just such a collaborative way that it was a beautiful experience, and I feel like he's almost a brother of mine now at this point. Like, that's how connected I feel with him. So.
And after these 4 issues, I don't want to get too ahead of ourselves, but are you continuing with the series after that? Because I know it's an anthology type of series.
We'll see. I mean, it's just these 4 issues for now. They have they announced in the panel today that they have 2 other Galaxies issues coming out involving other characters with different writers. There's other characters that are featured in mine that I could potentially see something happening with, but I won't. I mean, I don't know what IDW was going to do with it, so it's kind of the ball's in their court in that sense. But I think there's a lot of rich stuff to deal with if we ever want to go down that path and examine it further.